What?
You're live.
Oh, okay. Once again, I'm ruining everything. I've got a little yellow square at the top screen here. Carolyn, could you look at that for me? Is that anything or nothing at all? Because
it's saying you're live.
Oh, it's saying I'm live. I've never seen that before. I've never noticed it anyway. Good morning, everyone. And here we are. Yes, it's Thursday morning, and here we are once again. I have to tell you, it's a gorgeous day in Florida. It's been gorgeous for the last few days, and so it's what a wonderful place. How lucky I am to live here. All right, our topic today is what can the children in the spirit world teach us? And that's a very important question. It's very important to know that, because the children in the spirit world can teach us many things. We're going to be talking today about what the children in the spirit world have perhaps taught me, and also my group that I have some stories. Yes, I do. I know you all like my stories, so I've got some stories for you guys. But before we begin all of that, first of all, of course, you all know I would like to say hello to my spirit guide, Greg, who always stands to my right side here. He's going to be participating with me, whispering in my ear from time to time, reminding me of things from time to time. Then sitting to my right, on my far right, we have my wonderful assistant, Carolyn. Say good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning, Carolyn.
There you are. There she does it. And then to my right here, yes, we have our Peggy. Say good morning, Peggy.
Good morning, everyone.
There you are. So here we are, and we are, excuse me, we're raring to go. Now, did we have any questions? And we've had lots of questions. Are we starting off with questions, or I'm looking to Carolyn, you see, because why am I looking to you? I'm looking to Carolyn because she's the one who does the emails and sorts out all the questions and what have you, but she's just looking at me. So I guess it's me. I'm up then. I am up. So we're going to start. What can the children in the spirit world teach us? Some of you may have heard these stories before, and sorry, I'm going to get comfortable because, as you all know, when it gets to once upon a time, it's very important to be comfortable. That reminds me, when I was a kid, we used to have this radio show, and it was at something like 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the little kids, and the woman she had a very gentle, very soft voice, and she always used to begin story time. It was called story time. She always used to begin story time by saying, "Are you sitting comfortably?" And then we'll begin. So I'm sitting comfortably. Hope you guys are sitting comfortably. All right, we're going to begin with a story concerning my group, my team. And this is a few years ago when I was in England, and it was Friday night. We all were sitting around because my students would come for class on Friday nights. We never quite knew any time what was going to happen, whether we'd have visitors from the spirit world, or whether it just be my teaching, or whether we'd be doing exercise, whatever. We never quite knew until we sat down what actually was going to happen, or if indeed anything was going to happen. But this particular day, this particular evening, very quickly, as soon as we sat down, we always opened with a prayer, asking for God's protection and participation, and asking for all those in the spirit world to join us with their participation. And pretty soon after that, I felt, first of all, and then began to see a lot of rustling behind me, a lot of movement behind me. And I began to notice small children from the spirit world, quite a few of them, as a matter of fact, small children from the spirit world. So I'm telling the students this, I'm explaining, we've got some visitors, we've got some small children here. We're all very, very excited because we're always wanting to talk to kids in the spirit world. I am, especially because, I love kids anyway, so I love doing that sort of thing. Well, we began, and these children, and there was a spokesperson, a spokeschild who took the lead, and all the children would follow, and they went in turn to each of our students in the group. And it was pretty interesting. And then they would talk to this particular student, say what they had to say, and then move on to the next. what turned out we thought was going to be a very exciting and fun thing turned out to be perhaps not so fun for most of us, I think. And it turned out to be one of those evenings where we learned a very great deal. And one of the things we learned was humility, I like to think, most of us anyway. And we learned that we are always being watched. Wherever we are, there's always someone in the spirit world who can see us. Not because they're spying on us or because they're mean or not that, but because they're trying to help us and they're watching us. They're watching the soul's growth as we grow and as our soul grows. They're monitoring all of those things. They're watching all of those things. So, okay, so one of the students, the children came to one of the students who had two teenage, sort of young teenage girls. And they began to tell her about her life, about the house she lived in, about her daughters. And she was thrilled. She was absolutely thrilled because they obviously knew her. They knew all about her. They knew all about her children. But then it got a bit tricky because then they started to tell her, look, you know, we know that these girls, you asked them to clean the bathroom. And she's saying yes. And they said, you asked us to clean the bathroom last Saturday morning. She said yes. And they said, and you were not in a very good humor. You were not in a good temper. And she sort of hangs her head a bit and she says, yes. And that's, I think, when the dread starts to come in. Because, you know, we are human. We are not always nice people, even to our children. I have to admit, my daughter, if she was sitting here, she'd tell you, I've screamed at her a time or two. You know, we're human and we're parents, and that's what we do with our children. And of course, our children scream back at us sometimes, you know, so it's healthy. However, this lady was being told, you know, you hit your children. In the bathroom, you got so angry and you started screaming at them, and then you hit them, and then you made them do their job all over again, and you were very, very mean to them. Now, everything they said to her was correct, and this girl sat crying, very devastated, ashamed. She was ashamed. She was ashamed of what she'd done. Was she ashamed because she was observed, or would she have been ashamed anyway? I think in this particular case, she was ashamed because she was observed, and the children in the spirit world were actually calling her out for it. And they said to her, you were mean to your children, and we don't like you anymore. That first comment of, we don't like you anymore, stunned all of us, stunned us. Because we are only human. I don't think they meant we don't like you full stop forever and ever. I think they meant, I hope they meant, we did not like you in that moment. We do not like you when you are mean. We do not like you, especially with your children. We do not like you. Around and around the room, each of these children went, and each of these children pointed out something that this person had done that was perhaps not nice in the recent few days. And then, you know, and they would always end by, we saw this. We saw you yell at your wife. We saw, you know, your husband was painting and he was doing his best for you. This is another one that they said. And you came in and you were irritable and you started yelling at him and saying that he hadn't done the job right when all he was trying to do was to please you. This lady hung her head because, of course, it was true. This is exactly what had happened. And the children said, and you were mean to him. We don't like you anymore. Now, can you see that the whole idea of this was they, first of all, say to all the people there, except me, I sort of got let off the hook. That doesn't mean I was the only good one. It just means I got let off the hook. They begin with, you were mean and we don't like you anymore. You were mean. Now, I've got two pet peeves in my life. One thing I can't stand is meanness, and the next thing I can't stand is unfairness. They are my two pet peeves. And if I see it going on, I can't tell you that I'm not being mean to somebody, but I try very, very hard not to be. I try to be as kind and as gentle, even when I'm, you know, putting someone in the place. Even if I have an argument with someone, I'm not mean. I try very hard not to be mean. In fact, the angrier I am, and Carolyn might tell you this, not that you've not experienced it for yourself, I hope, but the angrier I am, the nicer and the more polite I become, because I strive my very best not to be mean. So in this particular case, these children are saying, you were mean and we don't like you anymore. Meanness. So they taught us that day, they taught us that meanness is a definite no-no. And if you're mean, and even if you think you're being on your own with your dog and you kick the dog, or you know, throw the cat out, and you're being mean about it, someone up there, someone around us, someone in the spirit world, they will see it and they will hear it. And every time we take a mean action, any one of us takes a mean action, it's a little tiny black spot on our soul. Of course, when we're kind, we can erase those meannesses, we can erase those moments if we strive not to be mean. But they teach us, you know, these meanness can sort of make little spots on our soul, black spots on our soul that we do not want. Another thing that this particular lesson taught to me was humility. I felt so humbled that a group of kids in the spirit world, some I knew because one or two had been my patients actually, and the spokesperson of this particular session was a little boy who died of cancer who was my patient. But you know, what it taught me was they're actually taking time out of their own day, out of their own learning, out of their own growth. They're taking time to come and help us. They actually care about us. All of these people, some we don't even know, actually care about us. And boy, that is very humbling. It was very humbling to me. So it, you know, taught me humility, and it taught me that I've been right all along to actually abhor meanness. So the rest of the day we'll have to strive, don't we? Even though we're miserable or we're unhappy or whatever it is, you cannot go home and kick your husband. You cannot go home and scream at your wife. You cannot definitely go home and yell at the kids. You got to be nice. Oh God, it's hard to be nice all day. It's actually easy for me. Oh, aren't I sweet and nice? It is actually easy for me to be nice because, you know, I think it takes much less effort to smile than it does to frown. But that's the lesson. How are we doing over there? Do we have anybody watching? Anyone listening? Are you all enjoying story time? Because we have other stories for you as well. Do we have anyone commenting or questions? You're not saying a word, Carolyn.
We do.
Okay. Let's go ahead then and let's have a look and see what we've got here.
All right. We've got Rosemary joined us.
Good morning, Rosemary.
You're going to be speaking with her next week. She lost her daughter.
Oh, okay.
So if you just wanted to say hello. And then we also have Deborah.
I'm looking forward to talking. Oh, are we Skyping or FaceTiming, or is she coming?
You're Skyping. She lives in another country.
You have to get on a plane, Rosemary. I'll look forward to next week, darling. Yes, and who else do we have?
We have Deborah. She's also going to be having a consultation with you soon.
Okie dokie then.
And
or as my grandson, as I've taught my grandson, say, okie dokie lemon jokey. Yes. Next one then.
All right. Her question is, my brother passed away 28 years ago and my dad passed last year. Did he see my brother right away?
I thought she was having a consult with me.
She is.
I'm not giving you a sneak preview, young lady. You have to wait now. You have to wait.
She had another question too.
Okie dokie then.
She said, if my nephew is mean to our family, does my brother have any influence to help us?
Depends on the circumstance, but very often, yes. Yes. Depends on the circumstance. Okay.
Okay,
That's
the
it.
question at the moment.
That's it. That's all we have. You know what it is? It's not all we have. She just wants another story. Where should we go now? What have we got? Peggy. Peggy's got the storybook. Right.
How about the story of David, the little disabled boy?
Oh. Well, all right. For those of you who've read The Eagle and the Rose, you know that David is one of my very, very favourite people. I won't say what the favourite, but one of my favourite people. And David's mother came to me after David had died. He was born disabled, and he couldn't speak, and he couldn't see, and he couldn't move. I mean, he was all of his life, and he, even though it was, you know, sort of, he lived for quite some time. When I saw him, I can't actually remember now. I'd have to read the book. I can't remember, but he was certainly in his teens. But he just looked like a little boy to me, because with all of this situation with his body, with his health, and so on, he hadn't grown, and he did look, you know, quite small, very small for his age, in fact. Well, his mother had come against the advice of almost everyone she knew, because, you know, oh, they're fake, these people are fake, she was told, or she, you know, she might tell you something you don't want to hear, etc. But she was so desperate. This is how people get caught up in this stuff, and how people get taken advantage of, because especially when you lose a child, especially when you're going through a trauma, many people look for someone like me, and we all know it. And so, you know, there are so many people who are not what they say they are. There are some who are, but many who are not. So, you know, I always advise people, even when you come to see me, please be skeptical. Use your common sense. Just use your common sense. And, you know, when you have someone ask you a question, like, what was his name? And then 5 minutes later they say, oh, I've got somebody here and his name is this. And they're just feeding back to you what you gave to them. Please use your common sense. That's when you should walk away, not pay. Don't pay. And, you know, walk away, leave it alone. Where are we? Back to David. So David's mother came to see me in great trepidation. She was very nervous. I don't know what she expected. I was much younger at the time and very sweet then. I'm not so sweet anymore, but I was quite sweet when I was younger. And I think the first thing that used to surprise people years ago was at how young I was doing the job that I did. Well, very, very, very quickly, David came along. There he was. I mean, he wouldn't shut up. And he described to me that, you know, when he was on this earth, he couldn't speak, everyone thought he couldn't hear, everyone thought he couldn't speak, he certainly couldn't move, he was completely paralyzed. And so people used to talk around him all the time. Well, the only person who really, truly, 100% believed that he could hear everything was his mother. His father wanted to believe, but you know, when the doctors say to you, oh no, it's got no hearing, nothing, there's a tendency for us to believe the doctors rather than believe what's inside. Well, David came through from the spirit world. One of the first things he said to his mother was, Mum, I can walk again. I can walk, I can talk, I can dance, I'm in the park, I can play football. I can run, I can run, I can run. It was a fabulous consultation. If you want to know the entire story, then you have to go to The Eagle and the Rose. I'm not going to tell you where in the book it is, but it's in a significant spot. But I'm not going to tell you because I don't want you to whiz through the book to find it. So you have to read the book from start to finish. But the story of David is in there. All right, what did David from the spirit world teach me? And certainly, what did David confirm for his mother? And anyone who reads this story will learn a little something, but hopefully you'll learn a lot. But the one thing that springs to mind with David is, as I say, he was paralyzed, he was blind, he couldn't see, he couldn't hear, he couldn't speak, he couldn't in fact move, and he lived for many, many years like this. His mother was told, his parents were told, put him in a home, he did, you know, whatever. She refused to do it. And every day she would brush his hair. He should keep his brush and a comb on the mantelpiece, and every day she'd go to the mantelpiece, take down the comb, and several times a day she would take his hair and brush his hair and talk to him, and she just believed he could hear every word she said. Well, David confirmed, yes, he did hear every single word she said, even though, yes, physically his ears were impaired. He could not hear physically. He couldn't see physically. He was blind. He couldn't talk physically. But he could hear and he could see, because he was using that part of him that we all have. He was using his spirit. His soul was in perfect working order and not disabled at all. So even though the doctor said, he can't hear you, no point talking to him, he can't hear you, can't see, blah, blah, blah. No, David taught us. So anyone out there, any one of you who has a disabled child and you think they're not listening, you think they can't hear you, or they can't see you, anyone out there who knows someone like that, anyone who's in a shopping mall and you see somebody walking with a wheelchair, right, and there's perhaps a child or somebody who's disabled in that wheelchair, the tendency is that we, all do it. I'm not going to include myself in that because I'm very aware of this. Thank goodness I've had all these fabulous lessons. But people will tend to talk to the person pushing the wheelchair, not the person in the wheelchair. And they'll say, oh, how is he? And how old is he? Oh, no, what's wrong with him? And we do it even with older people who can't walk and they're in a wheelchair, someone's pushing them, and we talk to the person who's pushing the wheelchair or the person who's standing to the side of the wheelchair rather than talking to the person in the wheelchair. Please, you need to talk to the person in the wheelchair. Remember that when you meet people, when you meet someone who's disabled, when you go into someone's house and there's a child there, or there's an old man there who seems not to be aware of you whatsoever, I can assure you, because I've been with people who have been in comas, I've been in all sorts of different areas. The soul, our soul, whether we physically are disabled or not, our soul will absorb, will see, will be aware, will understand. And this is what David taught his mother, and certainly he taught me just how clearly, whether you're disabled or not. And those of you who remember Thomas and the story of Thomas, which we told a few weeks ago on one of our YouTubes, and again, that's in one of my books, and I'm ashamed to tell you, I can't remember which one, but that means you have to read them all then. But the story of Thomas, and again, Thomas, his story, and he doesn't see, doesn't hear, doesn't speak, etc., etc. Thomas is this wonderful earth angel. And I think David was an earth angel too. The thing that David finished with his mum was to tell her that he not only saw her, he felt, he was aware in every way of how many times a day she brushed his hair. Now, this was her being affectionate. This was her way of needing to do something for him, needing to do something for a son who didn't seem to need her emotionally. The truth was that he did need her emotionally, and remember this, even though someone seems disabled and seems completely detached from us, or in a coma and completely detached from us, they do need that emotional connection. They always need that emotional connection, and that's very important. So David finished his consult, well, sort of finished his consult, by saying to his mother, I just want to tell you, you drove me crazy with that brush. He said, I kept wanting to say, don't do it anymore, Mum, don't do it anymore. He said, my head was so sore sometimes with the brushing of you're always brushing my hair. But at the same time, he was laughing. It taught his mother that her son, as she had believed, but now this was the most amazing confirmation for her, her son had always been with her, not just in body, not just physically, but in mind, body, soul, spirit, in every way. He was with her. He could hear, he could see. So that's something else that children in the spirit world have taught me. And hopefully I'm giving you a little insight and maybe teaching you all a little. You all, oh gosh, that's so American. Maybe all of you. I'm teaching all of you. I forgot my English heritage then for a minute. Maybe I'm teaching you something too, all of you. Right.
We have some questions.
Okay, then let's go.
We have Ambra from Tennessee.
Hello, Ambra. I think didn't we talk to Ambra last week?
Yes, we've talked to her.
Hi, and welcome back, Ambra. Then
regarding this story, she said that I was sick and in a coma when I was 6. I still remember hearing everything, but I couldn't speak. And then she wishes you a great Mother's Day. And she says, it's my mother who crossed over 5 years ago with me right now. I miss her even though we parted with some conflict.
well, Ambra, as you're talking about your mother, Grey Eagle has put his hand on my shoulder. And of course, I'm automatically putting my hand over his hand here as I'm talking to you. So I'm going to, were there 2 questions in there? Or
No, she was just basically agreeing that when she was in a coma, she could hear, but she couldn't speak.
what a fabulous experience that was for you then. And you obviously have recovered from that. So that's pretty good. The question about your mother and the conflict. Okay, Grey Eagle is squeezing my shoulder slightly, so I'm paying attention to him. I'm listening to him. And I don't see your mother, Ambra. I don't, but obviously Grey Eagle does. Apparently prior to her passing, there was a lot of angst within the family, a lot of issues, and it was, let's say, unpleasant. Let's be nice and say it was unpleasant in some regard. But it's families, darling, and you know, we live to regret things, and we forget life is very tenuous, and it can, you know, it can end for us in a second, certainly, you know, end as in on a physical level on this earth plane, and we're often left with issues. I don't think there's a family anywhere who isn't left with some little issues of one sort or another. Do you wish you had been nicer or better? Of course you do. I wish I'd been nicer and better every day almost. We're human. The message from Grey Eagle, and I think he's relaying this for your mother, is don't worry about the past. She's concerned for you and your future, and that you make the most of your future. And also, Grey Eagle is smiling, and I'm smiling too, because I know, because you know, we know what's coming next. This is apparently a direct line from Grey Eagle to your mother, who says to you, I love you. So whatever upsets and worries, they're all forgiven. And she's fine, apparently. Is she fine, Grey Eagle? I'm asking. Yes, she's fine. She's still a little bit concerned because there's still some angst going on in your family, and you know, there's still things that are unsettled, and she just wishes there were, you know, that people were calmer, maybe less arguing and stuff like that. Anyway, that's the message, and hopefully your question is answered. And I know you'd like more, but we don't have time for more for you, darling. But there you are.
All right. Nate joins us, and
Who?
he asks,
Nate. Hi, Nate.
He asks, if we die a young child, when we return to the spirit world, are we a child also, and for how long? Or can we at will change to another age in our appearance in the spirit?
Yes. Wait a minute. All right, we did talk about this, I think a couple of weeks ago. I can't actually remember which video it was that we did, but we did talk about it. I'm not sure why this is, Nate, and you need to remember, we're not all knowing and all seeing. I'm not certainly all knowing and all seeing. I can only go by my experiences. I've had the experience of, first of all, talking to adults. The oldest, the one that stands in my mind was a 56-year-old man who was a twin to a 56-year-old lady who came to me for a consultation, and he died within a few hours of his birth. Not immediately, but within like a few hours, he died. She lived and he died. She was completely unaware. She knew in the back of her mind that she had been born a twin, but never thought of him at all. when I saw him, he was 56 years old. I've seen another young man who's the only son of this lovely lady. And he died also when he was several months old. And I saw him at the age of 22, which is what he would have been had he lived on that particular day. His birthday was coming up and he would have been 22. And I saw him as a 22-year-old young man. But I've seen other children in the spirit world who I know have been there for quite a long time, but I see them as children. So I think, Nate, I think the last part of your question is, can we change age or whatever? I think, I think we can. I think we can decide to stay as children, or we can decide to show ourselves. And often people show themselves to me in a way that someone will recognize them or understand what I'm saying to them. So, but yes, I think the answer to your question is, some children stay young. Some children choose to grow in a sort of in a physical sense, using their etheric body. I will see them as older. Very often, if a child dies young and goes to the spirit world, if they have siblings, they'll be around the siblings and visit the siblings, and as the siblings grow, they will often grow. So that's an interesting one as well. The part about, can we choose to be any age we want to choose to be? I'm asking Greg, or I'm getting nowhere with it, really. I think you have to wait and see when you get there. So I'm not sure about that question, but I think it's likely.
He says, very logical, and happy Mother's Day.
Oh, darling, thank you so much. I have to say, I'm British. We have our Mother's Day in March. Although my daughter didn't celebrate, she didn't send me anything. And think about it, I didn't send her anything either. She's a mother now too. So we're probably going to, when is Mother's Day? Is it June
Sunday,
in America?
Sunday. No, Sunday.
This Sunday?
This Sunday.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Father's Day is in June.
And I'm not doing a thing. Nobody's invited me anywhere. Oh, I'll have a nice day sunbathing outside. All right then. Okay.
We've got another question.
Nate, thank you for that.
Deborah asks, if we are sick when we pass on as children, when we get to the spirit world, are we healed immediately?
Completely and utterly, yes. The physical body is what is sick. If we lose an arm or a leg or even a little finger or something, it's from the physical body. The etheric or the spirit body, which is the same shape and size as our physical body, is whole. This is why, people have that, they call it phantom pains if someone has a leg removed, but they can still feel the leg. Well, that's because the leg, the spirit body, the etheric body is whole, complete and whole, and still has that leg. So yes, and when we leave here, any physical illness that we have, we leave behind us. The illnesses that we have, and this is why we have many people in the spirit world, you'll sometimes hear children who say, I've chosen to be a healer here, or I chose to help the children here. Many people in the spirit world, when they leave here, and especially those who have had long illnesses, they're not suffering physically anymore, but emotionally and spiritually, they're very often depleted. And so they need healing for that. But physical pain and physical illness, it's as soon as the etheric body leaves the physical body, they leave all of that pain, physical pain behind. They take with them the emotional, the spiritual pain. They take that with, and often they need help with that. So I hope that helps you. Next question. Do we have another question or no?
No, we're waiting on another question to come in.
God, these people are slow this morning. What's going on? What's going on? All right then.
But I did think of something real quick, and I wished I'd have thought of it.
And this is Karen talking here, so go ahead, darling.
On the healing minute. Your lawn care guy with the baby.
Yes. We have a guy who does a guy.
Nice man.
We have a very nice,
I just don't remember.
very nice young man who does my lawns for me and keeps the place looking nice outside and what have you. And we learned yesterday that his wife had a baby. This will be their second, and the baby was born with a very odd and very rare disease. Did you have a question about that? It's
that
coming.
child, this disease, when you touch the child, their skin bubbles and falls off.
Yeah.
Does that child have to endure all that
Yes.
pain? Wow.
When prior to our birth here to this earth plane, let me say this before,
Yes.
and so am I reminding you now?
No, I'm just.
Okay. We can't understand, can we?
No.
Why on earth children have to suffer of all things? Why is Thomas unable to speak? Why was David born disabled? And so on and so forth. I'm going to tell you another story which I've told before, so I'm repeating, but I want to tell this story because it is particularly relevant to what children in the spirit world can teach us, even though this boy, although he's now in the spirit world, was not when I met him. But when we're born to this earth, we're not just created and then plonked down somewhere. Nothing is accidental, nothing. And so prior to our birth here, we're counseled. We figure out what it is that we want from this earth experience. Do we want to learn more about compassion? Do we want to learn more about kindness? Do we want to test our soul and to test the strength of our soul? How much strength do we have, and so on? And for each one of us, we are placed in an environment where our needs will be best explored and met. So, for instance, if I wanted to, as a child, if I prior to coming here, if my one theme was I want to learn about kindness, I might be put into an environment where there's so much kindness and that I can't help but absorb it. Or I might, in my case, be put into an environment where the kindness is very lacking and rarely ever there and rarely given. And then we have choices. Are we going to go that way with all these people who have influenced our lives and have created this meanness and unkindness in our lives? Or are we going to, as in my case, I remember one day, I was only a kid, and I remember one day looking up at my mother's face, and she was leaning over me and she was screaming at me, as was usual. And my mother was very mean, which is, I said earlier, I cannot stand meanness. I can't stand myself to be mean to others, even though sometimes I am. But I can't stand seeing meanness in others either. And when I see someone being mean to someone else, I just have to open just can't help it. Just open my mouth. I try to be kind. Please don't be mean. That was mean. Please don't do that. I don't like it. That sort of thing. Sometimes it's taken well and sometimes it's taken not so well. But anyway, I won't stand back. I'm not a fence sitter. When I see something like that happening, I have to get off the fence and say something. But I remember as a kid and my mother screaming at me, looking down at me, over me. So very overwhelming for a child when an adult does that sort of thing to you. And her face, when we were very young kids, and before this happened, we'd gone to see The Wizard of Oz, and you all know the story of the Wizard of Oz and the Wicked Witch of the North, and how she'd screw up her face and how she'd cackle and how she'd have this tightness about her and so on and so forth. And I remember looking at my mother, and it really truly was like looking at the Witch of the North, and her face was screwed up and it was all pinched and her mouth was pinched and the nose was shut. My mother had a hook nose, slightly turned under. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But she looked like this awful Witch of the North, Wicked Witch of the North. And as she's screaming at me and yelling at me, of course I was afraid. I was very nervous about it. But I came away from that thinking, actually the thought in my head at the time was, do I look like that? Do I look like my mother? And I remember racing to the mirror. I was only a young kid, and I remember racing to the mirror to see if I looked like the Witch of the North. which my mother did very, very often, unfortunately, because it's not about the actual physical look, it's about what's going on behind it and the meanness and the unkindness and so on and so forth. And I remember saying at the time, I'm going to do everything in my power not to look like that. And that was one of the best lessons for me. So I was put in an environment where I was not experiencing kindness, and therefore I learned how important it was to be kind to children, because I was that child that was laid this meanness and unkindness on me, and I did suffer for that. So my role was to make sure that under my watch, no child was going to suffer that. So we're put in environments, and sometimes Thomas was put in this environment, David was put in this environment. They learn, they grow. We're put in an environment where we have these experiences. There are no accidents.
Okay. We've got, well, speaking of there are no accidents.
Yeah.
Gabriella says she has a very good friend who
I'm
had a
drinking
car
Coke
accident.
and water here, sorry, I'm just, yes.
She had a very good friend who had a car accident. She was in a coma for 3 months. Now she is very depressed and her life is very different.
This is the friend.
Yes. Did she choose this accident?
It's not that, this is who's asking this question?
Gabriella.
Gabriella, it's not that we choose necessarily the accident or the incident that gives us these experiences. It's that when we come here, we're putting our trust in that almighty power. We're putting our trust in that, that creative power, the energy that we're born into, and that we are that energy. We put our trust in God, we put our trust in ourselves, and we just come into this world knowing that, not necessarily the specifics, but knowing that one way or another we're going to be given lessons and we're going to learn or not, because it's our choice to learn or not. So was your friend told very specifically it's going to be an accident, you're going to be in a coma, etc., etc.? I don't think it's that specific. Was she, did she say before she came, I want some experiences that's going to stretch my soul, and I trust you to give me those experiences? That's probably what it was. And this is one of those experiences which, hopefully in the long run, when she, gets over that depression, please put her on our healing book, because we will send her a healing. But it's one of those things that, once we can learn from that and grow from that, which hopefully this girl will do, then the experience, as awful as it is at the time, is actually worth it afterwards, when we've combated and we fought and we see how strong we are. The experiences like this teach us that, we can't be destroyed. We refuse to be destroyed. So as much as she's having this awful depression right now, I think my advice to you is remind her of how strong she is and how strong she can be in the future. You might want to let her listen to this little tape. And certainly if you send us her name, we will definitely put her on our healing list. And I wish you well with this. I'm going to tell a story now, because I'm not even interested in that. I'm interested in your questions. I want you to keep chatting to me. But I'm going to tell you a story which I've told before, but it's about a little boy who was not in the spirit world at the time, but he is now. And he was born very disabled. And I met him in a nursing home. It was a home for children who were very, very severely disabled. This little boy, I was in the lounge of this place, sitting on the sofa, minding my own business and trying not to look at him in particular, but any of the kids, because at that time, I'm going back years and years, I was very young and I wasn't good. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't have sympathy. I just was very young and I didn't know how to express that sympathy. I didn't know what to do with it, especially with children, because children who are sick, children who are disabled, children in any way affect me, good or bad, healthy or not healthy, they affect me very much. So I'm into kids, basically. So here I am, I'm sitting in the lounge, and there's this little boy. I'm not sure of his age. Let's say he's 5 or maybe he's 6 or something. But anyway, he is the ugliest kid you've ever seen in your entire life. He was wearing a pair of pajamas. His legs were completely crooked and his arms were sort of twisted and his hands were twisted. Most of you have seen this sort of thing. Completely twisted up. His face was sort of, it's almost as if God said, let's have some fun with this, because his face was totally to one side, lifted almost to one side, lopsided, his chin sort of stuck out this way. His face was completely contorted. He couldn't speak. He just grunted all the time. And to top it off, God must have been having maybe a bad day or something. But to top it off, this little boy had bright, bright ginger hair, which stuck up all over his head in big spikes. Ugly, ugly kid, really ugly. Well, there I am sitting there minding my own business, and he comes up to me, starts tugging at my skirt with his deformed hand and making all these noises and slobbering. His eyes were sort of crossed. And I sat there pretending that, that I wasn't there really. I pretended, I don't know what I was pretending, but it made me very uncomfortable. I was very, very uncomfortable. And this went on, and this kid would not leave me alone. 5 minutes went by and he's still tugging and making these noises. Then another 5 minutes goes by, and at some point a nurse walked behind me. She was obviously disgusted with me. She said in this sort of sarcastic voice, she said, if you do his pajama jacket up, love, he'll leave you alone. And I looked, and sure enough, his pajama jacket, all the buttons were undone on his pajama jacket. Now I've been called out, right? I've been called out. So I lean forward very gingerly, because I don't do slobber and I don't do runny noses. I love kids, but oh my goodness, don't do any of that. Can't do that, because I will be the one end up throwing up, right? Because I've got a very weak stomach. So I lean forward, I gingerly button up his pajamas, trying not to get the slobber on me, right? And I'm sort of doing up the pajamas, and he's just staring at me. He's making all these weird, really like alien-like noises. Yes, I'm a horrible person. This is what I'm thinking, oh gosh, I've got to do this quickly and then he'll go away. So I do up his pajama buttons and I sit back and I think, whew, now he'll go to someone else. Well, this kid makes this really weird, loud sound and hooks his thumb of this disabled hand, hooks the thumb between the buttons of his pajama jacket and yanks. And all the buttons come flying open. And I look at him and he's looking at me. And I look at him again and I think, oh God. So I lean down and I button his pajama jacket up and I'm thinking, now go away, now I go away. No. Another one of these really weird sounds. And again, he hooks his thumb, opens the jacket, and he's making these weird sounds. And I suddenly look at him, and instead of saying this ugly monster, I realize, it's like the light goes on, and I realize he's laughing. He's laughing. He's a crooked little thing, can't speak, can't walk, can't hold anything in his hands. He's laughing at me, he's laughing with me. And suddenly I see this little boy. I see a little boy hurting. I see a little boy who just wants some attention. I see a little boy who's laughing and has a sense of humor. So I lean forward and I button up his jacket and I say, now there you go. Now I buttoned up your jacket. Is that okay for you now? And I begin to talk to him. He laughs. He gets his thumb. He hooks it in his jacket. He yanks. We play that game. We play that game for ages and ages and ages until a nurse comes and takes him away because he now has to go to bed. But I sit there with that child for ages and ages. That child made me ashamed of myself. That child shamed me. I shamed me. He didn't really shame me. He just showed me my shame. I looked in the mirror and I saw a coward, because it wasn't that I was afraid of him. I was afraid of me, and I was afraid of my reactions. It's like the people who talk to the person who's pushing the wheelchair because they don't actually want to look anyone in the eye who's in a wheelchair, because we're afraid of our reactions. We're afraid of our emotions. We're also afraid, many of us, that there but for the grace of God go I. We're afraid that maybe we, vulnerable as we are, going to end up in that wheelchair, in that position ourselves. Maybe at some point we're going to have a child like this little carrot top boy who was a darling. We're afraid. But you can't live your life being afraid. You have to be brave. I was brave. This kid taught me to be brave. And I know that he's now in spirit world, and I know that he's still teaching. I know that he's around. And Gregel's just whispered to me in my ear, and he's here with us, well and healthy and whole once again, but he's here with us. So isn't that nice? Never thought I'd see him, so that's a nice thing. Okay.
Diana says, that's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. We do have a couple of questions.
Yep.
Douglas asks,
Hello, Douglas.
he says, I would like to know if my dogs hear me and understand me, and
Oh, yes.
well, they're still physically here.
Yes. Oh, yes.
He asked, oh, do they feel as if they are my children?
No. I'm saying no, definitely. I'm into dogs. I don't know where Cachorro is. We locked him in. We've got two dogs here at the moment. We've got Peggy's dog, and we've got my Cachorro, who understands every single word I say, Douglas. And you know, you're asking this question, but you know that they do. You know that they do. You might think that they're your children, but they are attached to you in it's, you know, dogs are pack animals. Remember that. There always has to be a leader, and there always has to be a follower. Children are very different. We teach our children to be independent, and hopefully we want them to behave themselves, but we teach them to be independent because we know that they're going to grow up and go out into the world. Dogs are so dependent on us. We're not about to teach them to be independent because we don't want our animals to run off and, you know, go all over the place. We don't want to lose them. So we actually, if we're sensible with our animals, we are the leader of that pack. We take care of them, and we make sure that they follow us and, you know, do what we ask them to do. And sometimes we have to tell them to do, because for different reasons than we would for our children. But whatever they think, it's obvious you love them to pieces. And I want you to just, doesn't matter if they think they're your children or you want to think that they think they're your children, go ahead and think it. They just think that you're the master and they adore you. That's what they think. And that's who you are. You are their master. Do not underestimate. A dog is a pack animal. A child is not. Oh, it's so hard. When I'm cuddling my Cachorro, I tell him he's my baby. He's my lovely little boy. But when my grandson hears me say that, he gets a bit jealous. So I have to stop. I can only do it when my grandson is not watching. But they're not really our children. Then they don't feel that. I don't believe for a minute they feel that way. I think they worship you because you're their master and you take care of them and you do all the right things for them, Douglas. Good for you.
Val has a question.
Hello, Val.
Sometimes spirits become earthbound because they refuse to cross. Does that happen to some children who die as well?
Yes.
Or are children immune to this?
No. I don't remember which book. It might be the Eagle and the Rose. I can't remember which book. I do tell a story about a little girl. This happened, so it's probably in the Eagle and the Rose. This happened in a group session of small, very, very small, invite-only group session where I was doing some trance work. And we were doing what we call in the trade, we call it rescue work. So very often I was asked to rescue a lost soul, Val. and that soul would be brought to me, and often would live their lives or tell something about their life. They'd use my body, they'd use my voice, and they'd tell their story to whoever was listening. And we had one time we had and the people who are listening are people who we choose specifically to know what to do, to answer the right questions, and to help this child to, or this person, this lost soul, to move on and to move forward and to leave, you know, this safe space. You know, they sit in the tunnel very often and they just don't want to go forward. They can't go back. They don't want to go forward. And we had a little girl, she was a cutie. Oh gosh, she was so spoiled. She'd lived all of her life. She had serious, debilitating lung disease. She lived in a machine for most of her life. You know, the machine breathed for her. But of course, she was pampered. She was given anything she wanted. Her parents doted on her, loved her, worshipped her, etc., etc. And she wasn't going anywhere without them. And so she refused to go. So she was brought to us because she refused to go without her mummy. And, you know, mummy was, you know, mummy, she needed mummy. And we did try a lot of things to try to get this girl to, you know, to move forward, because there were people waiting for her at the end of the tunnel. They were waiting patiently for her. And then, of course, I'm very smart with kids. We already established I'm good with kids. I'm smart with kids too. And I realized this kid always got what she wanted. She was a darling little girl, but she was extremely spoiled. So we're talking about, you know, you need to sort of head down the tunnel, darling, and I'm not going without my mummy. And, well, you know, there are people there waiting for all this. We tried to be nice. Well, I'm not going without my mummy. And then I suddenly realized I'm going to try another tactic. So I actually said to her, well, you know, even if you wanted to, you can't go. And her immediate response and reaction to me was, I can if I want. Nope, sorry, you can't go, sorry. I can if I want. And this is how we got a spoiled little child who wanted her own way. This is how we got her to leave this earth plane finally, to sort of leave that place where she had, it was her choice. And it's always the choice of the person who is stuck to be stuck. It's always that choice. And it was her choice to be stuck and wait for a mummy, but she was desperate. She was crying, etc., etc. Her angels were with her, but no one was going to force her to a decision. This was her decision. We finally were able to get her to cross the void, which the tunnel, if you like, which separates our two worlds, where her angels were able to lift her and bring her to the light, and where she would be healed and whole.
Last question.
Oh, yeah, time's ticking, isn't it? Okay, go ahead then. Last question.
Diana asked.
Hello, Diana.
And I told her you might scold her and tell her she needs to read the Eagle on the Rose.
Oh, really? Did you tell her that? Okay.
She's asking, at what age did you discover your gift, and how did you discover it? What event?
Diana, go get the book, for goodness sake. It's a very, all of you are chatting there. Could you just, all of you who have read the book, can you go tell her what a fascinating and amazing book it is? I'm not going to tell you, Diana. You've got to read this for yourself. When you read it, you'll be as stunned and as amazed as I was going through it. It's a great story. It's all, of course, it's all a true story, but it's a great, great story. If you've seen the movie, what is that movie? The Sixth Sense,
Yes.
Is that movie with
Bruce Willis.
yeah, good old Bruce. He's great, right? Anyway, if you see that movie, it's sort of like that. Only in the movie they changed it, and he has a lovely mother who cares about him. Because anyway, I'm not going to tell you too much now. I'm going to let you read it, Diana. Read the Eagle and the Rose, and then maybe you could do a review of it and write to us and tell us what you think. Only if it's positive, but you write to us and tell us what you think. You'll love it. I promise you, if you're into this subject, you will love my story. The Eagle and the Rose by Rosemary Alteo. If you want it, you can email us. We can send you a copy, or you can go online and get it. Okay, is that it? Are we done?
One quick question from Kieran, and I believe last week, yes, you gave her healing.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not sure if Kieran is a man or a woman. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All right.
They're asking how long do they stay in the spirit world? My niece died of appendicitis in 1974. She's still in the spirit world. She was 14 at the time.
This is one for Grey Eagle. And I'm so sorry for your loss, Kieran. I'm asking Grey Eagle, who has his hand on my shoulder. I'm told that she's actually still, of course, there, learning, growing, often visits the family. So she's safe. Yes, she's safe.
Amara's a woman.
So yes, she's safe. Anything else that we...
Just accolades from Diana and Ambra. Thank you for a wonderful show.
Well, listen to all of you out there. You see, one of the reasons that we did choose children is because obviously it is Mother's Day. I'd forgotten that it was Mother's Day on Sunday, but it is Mother's Day, and of course we're all interested in the child. I think we're all interested in the child aspect of things. If you have lost a child, please know that they are safe and well, because our angels take care of our children always. If you want to please your children in the spirit world, then they want you to be happy and they want you to find your own lives. Two big no-nos here. No meanness, even in your thoughts, even if you don't carry it through. Really work on the meanness and work on the kindness and work on the fairness of things, because that's what pleases our children most, and that's what will give us from them the most accolades, and it will give them the most peace also. So work on that. In the meantime, I'm not sure, do we have a subject for next week? We're not sure about next week because my darling boy, my darling grandson, and my darling little girl, my daughter, are coming on Wednesday evening. We may, if my daughter agrees, we may next week do something, and you'll see my grandson, my daughter, maybe they'll participate with me, and we will have a family thing to celebrate Mother's Day and to celebrate family. But if she says no, we shall let you know. So keep watching Facebook, keep watching for us. We'll let you know. We'll watch it on Meetup. We'll let you know what is actually going on. I did try to call her today to figure things out, because I forgot until this morning to ask her. But so we may or may not do that next week. So just check in with us. In the meantime, until we see you again, you can contact us. Email rosemary@rosemaryaltea.com. You can contact us on Meetup, on Facebook, on Twitter. Anywhere else? Can you think of anywhere else, Peggy?
YouTube.
YouTube. You can see us on, oops, forgot that bit. You can see us on YouTube. And if you could, all of you, send healing to Peggy's little dog, please, because she's not very well. And in the meantime, until we see you again, you know what I'm going to say, hopefully, please, all of you, please, be nice, be kind, be loving, be fair, and have a very, very, very blessed day.